In 1924, a celebrated American chemist stood in front of a room of reporters to put their minds at rest. There were rumors about the new petrol additive his company was selling, that it might be dangerous. So he did something memorable. He poured the stuff over his hands, washing them in it like soap. Then he lifted an open bottle to his face and breathed the fumes slowly for a full minute. "Perfectly safe," he said. "I could do this every day." What he didn't mention was that he had already spent part of the previous year off work, recovering from poisoning by that very chemical, and that he would be poisoned by it again. The additive was tetrythyl lead. It stopped car engines from knocking, a real, if minor, problem, for which a cleaner alternative already existed, just slightly dearer to make. And the chemists of the day already knew what lead does to a child's developing brain. They sold it anyway. For the next 50 years, the world breathed leaded exhaust, and a whole generation grew up with a little less of the intelligence it was born with, measurable, permanent, stolen a few points at a time from hundreds of millions of children. It was not an unforeseeable accident. The warnings came first. They were waved through on a single sentence that should make your skin prickle by now. The harm wasn't certain. Last time, I left you with a question. If the danger from this technology is anything like what these episodes have laid out, why is almost nobody acting like it? Why don't we just stop? The honest answer is uncomfortable, and it starts with that chemist. The easy thing is to call him a monster and move on. The truth is probably worse. He may well have believed his own demonstration. He had poured his life into this work, so how do you bring yourself to believe that your life's work is poisoning children? It is far easier to believe the people raising the alarm are overreacting, and that the harm, since it isn't certain, probably isn't real. That is not stupidity. It is one of the most reliable patterns in human history. When a disaster is unthinkable, when the people in charge have said, with confidence, that it cannot happen, human beings struggle to believe in it even as it arrives. A nuclear reactor of a certain Soviet design was not supposed to be able to explode. That was the official line. So when one did, in 1986, the men in charge spent hours refusing to accept what had happened, and the nearby town was left going about its ordinary evening. Its children still out in the streets, because ordering an evacuation would have meant admitting the impossible had occurred. A ship was unsinkable. Everyone knew it. So when she struck the iceberg, the first lifeboats were lowered half empty, because why would you trade the warm, bright decks of the greatest ship ever built for a cramped rowing boat in the freezing dark? "We are safer here," one passenger reportedly scoffed, "than in that little boat." This is how we normally learn. We deny the problem. Reality knocks us down. And then, bruised, we start to take it seriously. After the Titanic, ships carried enough lifeboats. We make the mistake the first time, and we fix it the second. The whole argument of this series is that a machine superintelligence does not give us a second time. So that is the first half of the answer. The second half is the people actually building this, because they are the real puzzle. By their own admission, some of them put the chance that this kills everyone at something like 1 in 5, and they keep building. Why? Partly the plainest reason there is: no single person can stop the field. If you, personally, put down your tools and walk away, the lab next door keeps going, and the only thing you've changed is that you're not the one holding the prize at the end. So you may as well take the money and the glory and tell yourself you'll be the careful one. But money isn't the whole of it, and it would be a comforting mistake to imagine these are simply greedy people. Most of them are chasing something beautiful. If you truly believed you could build this safely, the prize is almost beyond imagining. An end to disease, an end to aging, clean and limitless power, a door thrown open onto the stars. People do not give their lives to a project like that because they are villains. They give their lives to it because it is the most magnificent dream our species has ever allowed itself. The authors of this book know that dream from the inside because they used to live there. The elder of the two founded his research institute a quarter of a century ago to build exactly this, a superintelligence, which would surely be a wonderful thing. He went looking for how to make it safe, and what he found, the deeper he dug, was that nobody knew how, and that the problem was far harder than the dream had ever let him believe. There's an old line that fits this precisely. It is difficult, Upton Sinclair wrote, to get a man to understand something when his salary depends on his not understanding it. And these are people with far more than a salary riding on it. Their careers, their identities, their picture of themselves as the ones carrying humanity to paradise. All of it depends on the danger not being real. Now I have to stop and be careful, because we've reached the place where this argument can quietly cheat. And if I let it, I'd be breaking the promise this series is built on. Look again at what I just did. I explained why the people who disagree with the alarm might be wrong. They're in denial. They're paid not to see it. It's a satisfying move. It's also a trap, because you only believe that because of your incentives is a weapon that fires in every direction, including straight back. The people sounding the alarm have incentives too. There is funding in fear and status and books to sell, and the intoxicating sense of being one of the few who can see the asteroid coming. A community built around a frightening idea tends to reward you for taking it more seriously, not less. So here is the rule, and it binds both sides. A story about why someone believes a thing is not evidence about whether the thing is true. Let an AI executive has every reason to wave the danger away, does not make the danger real. That a critic might profit from hype does not make the critic wrong. None of the psychology decides it. Whether this is actually dangerous and how much, that was the work of the earlier episodes. And the honest answer there was wide. Serious. Informed people put the odds anywhere from vanishingly small to more likely than not. This chapter isn't about that question. It's about a narrower one. Why, granting a danger of whatever size, the response is so slow. And on that narrower ground, the strongest voices on the other side have earned the right to be heard at full volume, because they are not cranks. Some of the sharpest aren't optimists at all. They study the harm this technology is doing right now. Biased systems deciding real lives, mass surveillance, the hollowing out of work, the way it pulls power into a very few hands, and they argue that the grand story about extinction is a distraction from all of it. Worse than a distraction, a gift to the companies, who get to look profound and responsible, fretting about a science fiction apocalypse, while the concrete damage they're doing this year goes unwatched. And some push it further still, that the doom talk isn't only a distraction, but a sales pitch, because a company warning that its own product might end the world is also boasting about how powerful that product must be. On that reading, even a series like this one is doing the industry's advertising for it. I don't think that's the whole story. But a series that promised to turn its skepticism on every side has to be willing to turn it here too, on its own source. And others think the existential case is simply overblown. Doom has been forecast, confidently, many times, and the world is still here. The upside isn't science fiction either. People are dying today of diseases this technology might genuinely help to cure, which means going slowly has a body count of its own. And the remedy this series is moving towards, stop, everywhere, together, could just hand the future to whoever ignores the rules, or freeze the power of whoever gets to run the one project still allowed to climb. These are serious objections, held by serious people. A fair viewer should feel their weight. not have it waved away. So what's left, once you've taken all of that seriously? This. You don't actually need the risk to be high. Take the modest number, the 1 in 10, the 1 in 5, that even fairly cautious experts will say out loud. Then stop looking at the number and look at the shape of the thing. Picture every company in this race climbing a ladder in the dark. Each rung you climb pays 5 times the one below. $10 billion, then 50, then 250, then $1.25 trillion. But somewhere above you, at a height nobody can see, the ladder is rigged. Reach that rung, and everyone climbing dies. No one knows which rung it is. Maybe the next one. Maybe 20 up. Now, who climbs down? The next rung might be perfectly safe, and it pays that kind of money. Stopping just means the climber below you goes past, and every single climber can tell themselves the same story, that they, unlike the reckless others, will know when to stop. That they're the safest hands on the ladder, so really they're the ones who ought to be in front. Nations are on the same ladder with the same logic. Fall behind and you're vulnerable. And besides, the next rung might be vital for national security. All of this would be manageable if someone could simply do the sum. If the scientists could announce, the deadly rung is the 4th one. The line is exactly 257,000 chips. Stay under it, and we're safe. But nobody can do that calculation. Nobody knows where the rung is, and that is the whole problem, stated plainly. That if people keep climbing, at some point we don't survive. That is the easy call. Which rung, and what year? That's the hard call, and no one alive can make it. Put the two together, and you get something stark. We don't actually need to know which rung is fatal. If we can't bring ourselves to stop while the uncertainty lasts, we reach it anyway. There's a hopeful answer to all this, and it deserves a fair hearing. One of the people running a leading lab has proposed that the world build a single international project for advanced AI, a CERN, like the Great Shared Physics Laboratory. Every major power with a seat and an observer, the work done in one guarded place instead of a dozen racing ones. And that would help genuinely, but with one thing only. It could let the world climb down off the ladder, if, and only if, it came paired with a hard ban on everyone else racing up. What it would not do is make the thing at the top safe. An international committee, however many flags are in the room, is no more able to control a superintelligence than the assembled kingdoms of the year 1100 could have been handed the plans for a nuclear reactor and told to build one that wouldn't melt down. The problem was never who holds the leash. It's that, as we are, nobody can. That is the book's flat conclusion. This is out of our league, and we should step back and find another road to the future we want. And here is where I'll leave the man we began with. Because Thomas Midgley invented one more thing. The chemical he put in refrigerators and aerosols drifted up into the sky and began eating a hole in the ozone layer, the thin shield that keeps the sun from scouring life off the surface of the earth. It was an invisible harm and a slow one, a threat from a product people loved, with profits behind it, and uncertainty enough to argue about for years. You don't hear about the ozone hole anymore, not because we ignored it, because the world, every major nation, looked at an invisible, uncertain, far-off danger, agreed it was real enough, and chose together to stop. The hole is closing. Whatever else is true, we have done this once already. So that is the honest answer to why we don't stop. Not because the people are fools or monsters, because they are dreamers, and the dream is gorgeous. Because denying an unthinkable danger is the most human thing in the world. Because the incentives all point up the ladder, and no one can tell you which rung is the last. And, unlike every other mistake we have made and survived, this one offers no second time to get it right. None of that is proof the danger is large. It's the portrait of a civilization that finds it hard to act on any danger it can't yet see for certain, including the kind it cannot afford to be wrong about. Your being alarmist is not an argument, neither is your in denial. What's left, once the psychology is cleared away, is simpler and harder than either. A danger we can't switch off, climbed by people who can't stop, on a ladder no one can measure. The hole in the sky closed because we decided it had to. The only question left in this series is whether we could ever decide such a thing again, in time, and for a danger we might never get to prove. That's where we go, at the end.